I went to the grocery store, right? And you'll just run into folks at the grocery store who'll say, "Hey, I'm the grandfather of so and so. I know you don't know me, but just thank you so much for whatever the heck you guys did up at that camp, because it's like we have a new grandson, you know?"
Welcome to What Would Our Kupuna Do? This is Richard Haw's blog, which looks at what we can do to make Hawaii Island a more sustainable place to live, so our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren won't be priced out of here and will be able to stay in Hawaii and live good lives here. Today, we're talking with Brittany Zimmerman. Brittany is formerly an aerospace systems engineer with NASA. Now she's CEO of UMay, a company that's working here in Hawaii to solve some of our Earth's problems. UMay has created technology that transforms waste into green concrete, clean air, and clean water.
I met Brittany more than a year ago. The first thing I heard was all this technical stuff that I have no idea about in space and stuff like that. But what I did was I just wanted to find out who she was and what her moral compass was. And it didn't take me any time at all to find out that she's a real deal. And I've been working with her really closely for that whole time. I trust her, and not only me, the local Hawaiian community really understands what she's trying to do.
Brittany, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Today, we wanted to talk about something else you're involved with. Brittany is also president of the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. That's an intensive leadership training and development program for high school students. Brittany, how did you get involved with Rotary and as becoming camp leader for this RYLA program?
It was my first year on the island here that I got asked to come be a speaker at the RYLA event. They were hosting it down at Volcano at the KMC location, and it was thrilling. Gail Takaki had invited me to come speak. She was the camp manager the first year that I was here, and I had a 1 hour slot where I was supposed to speak, and I don't know what happened. I ended up being there for 10 hours. The kids were just so engaged, and we were all getting so much from each other, and it bred, I think, a beautiful relationship, not only between a lot of the students there in a very mentor-mentee style of relationship, but also with the adults who were running the program. I later then also got asked to speak at the Rotary. And so my involvement in that space led to me taking on camp manager this year and next year so far. So
well, that's terrific. What is the camp all about? How does that work? What's its aim?
Yeah, so RYLA really looks at different students from around Big Island. There are other RYLAs in different locations. Our RYLA focuses on Big Island, though. Each of the other counties and islands does their own on the same weekend, which is President's Day weekend each year. Our specific RYLA pulls together applicants from around Big Island between 9th and 12th graders. And we looked at the stuff that they're doing currently in their schools, their aspirations to be leaders. And we do a lot to go through a selection criteria and then bring forward a group of students who are interested in really being rewarded for contributions that they've already done, and then come together at this camp that's intended to build them into strong leaders in their communities going forward.
Oh, that's terrific. So this camp that just happened, tell us where that was and give us a little picture of it.
I've been working really closely with the fire chief of Hawaii Island, Kazuo Todd, Jen Tanoy, and Kari. Kari and Jen worked on logistics. Kazuo Todd and I really worked on the programs about what do we want the takeaway, right, to be from this camp. And so it was a really exciting thing for us to work through. I think we revamped the curriculum to be something that's very new and very different, while holding on to some of the, I would say, essential threads that have made RYLA successful for so many years. This year, we really focused on leadership in a new way. And so for the first day of camp, it's a 3-day camp that we hosted this year up at Hale Pohaku, so up on Mauna Kea. So it was a really important thing there. Just culturally, a lot of these students have grown up in Hawaii and never made it up to Mauna Kea. So I would say that was the first kind of wow moment for a lot of the arriving students. The second part is that it's a selection of students from across the entire island. So we get to see this really interesting integration of students who've lived on the same island but never got to meet each other. other. The first day is really focused on self-leadership. You shouldn't expect to go out and be a leader of other people if you're not correctly leading yourself. So how do you first focus on self and lead self? And a big part of that is identifying what your motivators are, right? Why are you aspiring to do the things that you're doing in life? Right? You want to go and get into a good college. You want to be a lawyer. You want to do this or that, but why, right? What is the internal motivator for that? So we work really hard on trying to bridge the gap between understanding things and taking action. And the example I like to give in that is if you ask all the Americans in the United States how to live a healthy lifestyle, they can tell you that they should eat healthy and work out. And yet a majority of us aren't doing it, right? It's not a lack of information. It's a lack of motivating ourselves to do what we know is best for ourselves. And so we work really hard on the first full day of really breaking that down, understanding what it is that motivates us, and then tapping into that so that we can take the knowledge that we may already have and the future knowledge that we can get, and then translate that into positive action in a way that benefits themselves. And then from there, we move on to, okay, what does that look like when you're then trying to lead externally, right? If you're trying to lead small groups or your friends or clubs at school or communities, maybe eventually counties, maybe eventually the country, maybe eventually the world, we don't really know. We work on taking the different hierarchies, academia hierarchies, political hierarchies, corporate hierarchies, and really understanding those, understanding how they can be extractive to us and how also we can extract good information or benefit from it. Doing what we can to give the students all the tools that they need to be successful in life.
That's an amazing agenda for kids that age, who are ready to hear that.
Yeah, it really is. Going into it, one of the things that we talked about a bit too was this would be a hard activity for adults to go through. Is it appropriate, right, for 9th to 12th graders? And so for us, this was kind of an experiment to see if it worked out. And some of the activities that we thought were the most vulnerable or the hardest to get through, actually in our post surveys came back as the favorite activities of the students at the camp. So we were really excited about it.
Wow. What's an example of some of the activities you folks did?
I would say that the hardest activity when we're doing this is really the core activity and getting down to the self-motivator. We call it the WHYS activity, WHY. This is an activity where we'll ask somebody to share something with us. So maybe a student is nervous about their ACTs or their SATs that are coming up, right? So we'll say, okay, well, why are you nervous about your SATs or your ACTs? Well, I really want to get into a good college. And it's like, okay, well, why do you want to get into a really good college? How come that's important to you? And they're like, well, if I get into a good college, then I can get a good job and I can be successful. It's like, okay, but why do you want to be successful, right? And it's like, oh, okay, well, I want to be successful because I want to make a lot of money, right? And it's like, okay, well, why do you want to make a lot of money, right? And we can keep going down this, and ultimately it helps get to a place where you're like, okay, my big motivators are, that I just wanted to be truly loved by people, or maybe my motivator is I really want to leave a legacy, right? I want my name to not die, and I want to have like this lasting positive effect after I'm gone, right? Or whatever it happens to be. We don't know. When you get to the spot where you realize it, you don't even have to say it to the group, right? If you get to the place where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm motivated by this deep desire to just be loved by a lot of people, that might be something that's very vulnerable to say. Exercise is really about coming to the realization for yourself so that you know what's motivating you. And so it's a lot of these internal looking activities that I think give us an insight to not only why we motivate ourselves and how we motivate ourselves, but how we can then utilize that information to get ourselves to do what we think we should do, right, in the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, Richard, I know you went up and participated in this camp also. Tell us about that.
Just observing the young people engaging and then getting a little bit into the subject matter. The part that really got me was, it got down to, okay, what if you had this situation? You have an island and the island has everything except water or energy. Then they had to go through and systematically come up with answers to make the world work. That was really something. So here I am listening to what's going on. I've been around a long time. 79 years. So I do have an understanding. It was so amazing to me to see it happen.
Yeah, sometimes kids really give you a lot of hope for the future with the way they think and
Oh,
what they're
absolutely.
capable of.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
We set up these activities that relate specifically to the Rotary missions. So the Rotary is always focused on, eradication of different diseases, access to clean water. They work on literacy. They work on peace causes, things along these lines, access to reliable food. And so we set up these different islands, and the kids were broken down into these self-made groups, and each of them formed a government for this particular island, and each of their islands were facing major issues, right? One island had no access to fresh or clean water, right? One island was completely illiterate. One island had accepted so much waste that they couldn't grow their own food, right? They're a toxic island. And one island was going through civil war, right? And then we asked the students to come together to come up with ways to get out of that. So they built up all these different resource tokens throughout the weekend, but then they ultimately had to write legislation, and they also had to write a method of communication, and they got to choose the method of communication that made the most sense for their citizens, right? And it's really interesting because I think in my generation, and potentially, in Leslie's generation and in Richard's generation, we think of things like news articles, flyers and pamphlets and things along those lines. But it was really interesting because these students came up with some of the most creative solutions. It's like, well, we have an island that's illiterate. We can't send out flyers and pamphlets. Like, people can't read. What are we supposed to do with that? So they had their monarchy. They had formed themselves as a monarchy, put a giant play together to explain how the queen was reading a beautiful book, but they were playing the book out for them, and they were inspiring people about how exciting it would be if they had become literate. And then the castle was putting on these literacy and reading courses, and everybody was invited to them, right? And so some of the people put together different TikTok videos, which I wouldn't have ever thought to put on, but right, to help make it go viral, to spread messages, right? They had public service announcements and emergency warnings in multiple languages. All of this beautiful stuff. And it was brilliant. Their ability to write like legislative bills that make differences, to come up with different solutions, and then also build out communication plans that I think would legitimately work in the real world was amazing to watch.
That is really interesting. Wow. What a neat thing to be involved in.
We had a group of people come together and say, hey, it's President's Day weekend. I didn't know if you guys knew, but we don't have school on Monday. So is it possible for us to extend camp for one extra day? Like, we're getting so much out of this. We would like to stay longer. And like, maybe we'll take that into consideration for next year, but we can't extend the camp last minute like that. The youth facilitator said that a couple of the people who had come to camp, they really had felt like had adopted a kind of like nihilistic, none of this really matters sort of behavior, and left camp with a new spirit that the actions that they were taking directly impacted the world around them, and that they were the masters of whether or not they were going to be successful. So they were really excited to see that in some of the other students. It's just been so rewarding. I mean, it's really beautiful because I feel like these are the sparks that really end up turning into flames that change a few people's lives at a time, but then ultimately it's like a snowball, right? It grows with time, and the more of these we do, I feel like that message and those messages then don't get just spread by us, but it starts being spread by all of the students who attended camp, and then as that number grows, it can make its own waves.
How many students were up there this year?
34 of us up there, and I think 29 of them were campers and students.
I was surprised because I was called to explain, real shortly why I was there. I really wasn't prepared to do that, but I went through it really fast, yeah. And the response I got from the kids was amazing. Evidently, the path I took was pretty much what they were talking about earlier. Go figure out what you got to do for yourself, boom, and take care of yourself first, kind of a thing. When you're set, you've done what you need to do, then you can go back and go. So then you're not only just talking, yeah. I guess it's the lesson, but it blew me away to see that reaction. I stayed later on to listen and watch what was going on. Holy smokes, I know that. It took me like 79 years to figure this out.
Lucky students.
Yeah, right? Richard gave away his What Would Our Kupuna Do book as prizes, and they were very excited about it. He also gave away to the island team who took first place. So there was 5 students, one free use of the Sampan bus for a ride. And it was the most adorable thing. We're like, okay, this is something that you can, utilize. It's a cool thing. It's kind of like a limousine. It's cool to driving around in. This is like old school retro. And so we pulled up a picture of the Sampan bus for them, and they lost their minds. They were hooting and hollering. They were so excited. It was very well received.
That's neat.
Yeah, they said, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Could we utilize it to pick everybody up for prom? And we were like, heck yeah, you can.
Oh, that's wonderful. How do students apply for next year's camp?
They have a statewide application. It's quite simple to go through. It asks basic questions about what they're currently doing in school, why they're interested in leadership, things along those lines.
Thank you so much, Brittany and Richard. And thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of What Would Our Kupuna Do? Mahalo for watching, and ahui ho.